So I had an idea. I want to print something pretty cool for Easter this year now that I have a printer. Luckily, I think I found just the thing. The footage you're seeing is actually from a stream I did yesterday of me painting the figure, but I knew I'd be posting it today, so I wanted to make sure I had it done ahead of time. Try to do streams like this whenever I have projects in mind and stuff like that, so, shameless plug. Be sure to check out my streams. Anyways, so I was online browsing Maker World, and that's when I ended up finding this really interesting rabbit creature. I didn't want to do just another set of eggs or a rabbit, just the traditional stuff, personally at least. I ended up doing a couple little things like that for my family, but I wanted to do something a little bit more fun for the channel. So I thought this guy would be pretty interesting. Once I was finished priming it, I had to let it dry, so I took my airbrush to it for a few minutes and just kind of blew air on it. I started by doing a zenithal style primer. Once I was sure that it was totally dry, I know I wanted to get to a pastel kind of pink color for the base. The only paint that I had that was already pink was the pink horror from Citadel. So I decided that it would be a good idea to try to whiten it up a little bit because it was just a little bit too dark for what I was going for. So I lightened it up with a bit of white and then loaded it up into the airbrush and went ahead and started basing all around except for the mouth and eyes. I kept having issues with my airbrush, unfortunately. I'm still pretty new to doing airbrush, so I'm trying to get my consistency down in terms of how much paint to thinner. But once I was able to get it figured out, I got it nice and primed and looking pretty good in pink. I ended up going with Nuln Oil over the Adrat's Earth Shade from Citadel Color. I tested both of them on the bottom of the feet of the rabbit, and honestly, I just kind of liked the way the black looked over the brown with the pink. So I decided I preferred the Nuln Oil instead. I began brushing over top of the entire figure with the Nuln Oil, kind of purposely missing the eyes and teeth, obviously, trying to leave those as blank as I could, so it'd just be easier to apply the other colors later. Got into every crevice I could find, a pretty decent amount with the Nuln Oil until there was a pretty solid amount of shading going on. I wasn't too concerned with the paint being really clean in terms of the lines and stuff and separation between the shadows and the color, because the fur was meant to look gross and yucky looking. It was supposed to be kind of a undead, unnatural, grotesque rabbit. So once I was all done with the wash, I ended up letting it dry a bit, and then I went over with a slightly lighter pink color. I added a little bit of Vallejo's bone color to the pink that I had and ended up getting a nice highlight color that I wanted to use. So I went over all of the edges and kind of just did a quick dry brush. From there, I ended up moving into the teeth. And honestly, I just want to know, it's really important to make sure you go with especially with a creature like this, at least in my opinion, I prefer to go with more of a ivory kind of color than just a solid white, if you're new to doing painting. Don't go with just white for teeth unless you want them to look like they have veneers. Most people's teeth and most creatures' teeth are going to be more of an off-white. So given that I was also going to darken them up with some wash and blood and stuff like that, from there, I ended up applying a little bit of wash to the teeth, but with the teeth, I did actually do the Adrat's Earth Shade because I kind of wanted the brown coat more than the black this time. And then once I was dry, I applied just a little bit of blood to the tips of the teeth. I also went ahead and did the nails in that time and applied some that same color that I used to the teeth to the nails. I decided to go for a purple color, using a purple that I already had in a mix of red and blue to get to a different shade of purple. And I went over all of the lips as well as the internal part of the ears with that purple. From here, I moved on to the eyes, and with this part, I really wanted to try to spend the most time getting this right because I know that this was really the focal point of the face. So I wanted to do a good job with the eyes as well as the teeth and the chest because I knew that that's where most of your attention was probably going to be drawn to. With the eyes, I went for just a solid black color, and I coated it with just a tiny little bit of gray in the center, going for almost a cataract kind of look. My friend actually suggested it, and I thought it was a pretty cool idea. And then I did just a tiny little dot of white to try to show that light reflection off of the listening of the eyeball. Unfortunately, something I learned after I ended up doing it was it'd probably be better to place it a little bit more off to the corner. I put it a little bit too centered, and it looks more like a white pupil than the glisten that I was going for. However, lesson learned, and from here on I'll just adjust it over a little bit more, but still it's pretty badass overall in my opinion. And then from there I also went ahead and did just a tiny little rain of a really dark red to give it kind of an iris. After that I moved on to the ribcage area. Originally I was going to do a exposed ribcage with a bone color, but after applying the color I just didn't really like the way it looked. So I ended up covering that up and just did it more of a discolored kind of torn flesh and guts look. And I ended up filling that up with some of the Nurgle's rock from Citadel because the green and pink contrast looked super nice. And from there it was pretty much all done. I just went over and varnished up the eyes and the nails to make them a little bit shiny. And from there I ended up making a base just using some materials I had lying around from all my other mini stuff. And now this is the finished product. And yeah, that's about it. I did a couple other Easter prints. I'll throw some images up of what I did, as well as I'll throw some links down in case you guys want to share those as well. But I did some other things for the family. That was the main thing I wanted to do for myself, for a little fun thing, as well as to share with you guys. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any other cool ideas of some cool stuff that you guys would like me to print, definitely drop those in the comments as well. And I'm trying to think of what else I was going to say. Right. What I was trying to say was, have a happy Easter. I'll see you guys next time, and peace and light.